Alright, Manny Stay. You want an answer about antinatalism? I'll give you an answer. Okay? I'm going to skip the first part of your comment. I'm just going to go to the meat of it. Because the other part was about what the video before was about. And we don't need to get into all that. We are a reproducing DNA damn it, Dale. Okay. We are a reproducing DNA molecule creating more than it cleans up. Mess equals suffering. Why create a need that does not need to exist? Okay. Now, we have to take that to its complete conclusion. And that simply is that life is suffering and that life shouldn't be. Well, that doesn't really make sense. Okay, here's why. Sure, life is suffering. Okay? But anything that has a nervous system suffers. So is all life not worth it? Or are we just going to say human life isn't worth it? Now comes the problem of implementation. Okay, we all decide that the population should be reduced to nothing. No one should have children anymore. Okay. One problem you're going to run across is the Peter Principle. You're going to find that the people who are the most responsible, the most academic, the most intelligent, will be the ones that will be in the most socially stable situation to implement their antinatalist view. Because there's a biological imperative. And that also translates into a social pressure to create more children. Our biological imperative transfers through us into a sociological force. Now that needs a counterforce. And that needs intelligence, education, and implementation. So you see, only the most extremely intelligent and selective are going to be the ones implementing this. Well, as they go and others rise up in the ranks. Now here is where it gets into the question of environment versus racial, because we're talking about all races, the human race now, not just any particular race, but racial intelligence, nature versus nurture, so to speak. Because as less intelligent people are around, so will that create a gap that those of the lower economic echelons that didn't have a chance to have children will take advantage of this and rise up. And supposedly, without any glitches, rise up to the point where they feel the most intelligent, the most stable, and the culturally accepted or conditioned to take on this voluntary aspect of overcoming the biological imperative. Now, how fast this happens is how well they can adjust. But let's say you get a negative population growth, and you manage to overcome the financial aspects of it, where more people get older and younger people somehow manage to take care of the growing older population without older people being euthanized or becoming like a Logan's Run scenario or matricide. I think matricide is the right term. Where you kill off the older people when they get too old. Whatever that term is. Because if you can't take care of them, are you just going to warehouse them? Have you seen a convalescent home lately? Well, okay. Let's say you figure out that problem. Okay. Let's say you restructure society so that you get it down. Let's say you solve the problem of war. And you solve the problem of race, of who might not want to be told not to have children, although it's all voluntary. Somehow, you have to create a social awareness where the policy becomes implemented, the antinatalist policy, for it to work. Okay? Something has to make it function in a social... I couldn't think of the term. Just socially. Some social dynamic in a global society has to make it function. Now you get disasters. Wipes out all kinds of people. People want to help people. You get something as simple as a blackout. Somehow you manage to keep people from, you have a healthcare system so there's not a small baby boom when that happens. You have the situation of developing countries and diminishing oil supply. Somehow, with people in the developed world, you manage to get over that hurdle. You find a cheap alternative fuel, or the population becomes so low that it can use renewable resources. You find an alternative energy source that functions well enough for society to survive. Somehow you keep the social dynamic from becoming too ideologically embedded in the culture. You don't, how can I say it? You keep the zealots in check. You don't get a Jonestown situation. You don't get it into a religious setting. You keep it dynamic. You don't let it get static. I mean, you don't let it lose traction, if you understand my point. There's various ways it can get side-railed or derailed. Jonestown, religious dogma, divisions. Actually, rebellion. Whole peoples deciding that they want to repopulate because the population is too low. And they break away. Like, I'm talking like the world has gotten down to like 500,000 people. Remember, you're going for zero. You know, and what happens when it gets to the size of LA? The size of a small town. Could you picture it ever really getting that far? I don't think you could make it happen with humanity. I don't think you could get it under 1 million people. Or 1 billion, honestly. Without some type of revolt. But let's say somehow you manage. Okay? You get it down to 500,000 people. All of a sudden, people can live off sustenance living. And they can do it in a technological way that makes life pretty damn good. I mean, nature has sprung back. Eden is upon us, and we have the technology to live in almost a hunter-gatherer way with various alternative energies and food supplies that we live in a harmony with nature. The world has become an Eden again. And the population suddenly starts growing. Remember, all the mechanized people have now turned into some kind of futuristic agrarian types. Or live in domes or something. But what about indigenous people? Their population would grow steadily without the pressures of a mechanized world. People who still live in Stone Age conditions. They're out there. Who's going to tell them not to breed? Are they going to be conditioned? Are they going to be forced to be conditioned? As nature comes back, they're not going to care about antinatalism. So that's not going to work. At least unless you educate them or force them. Same thing almost. Okay. So you come to an equitable situation where you cross that moral hurdle. I don't know how you do that, but you manage it somehow. So now they're included in the social dynamic that is antinatalism. Alright. Now, this time, life has gone on for a while. It's been bounding back and forth. The planet is renewed. There's been plagues. Medicine is very advanced because the condition of the quality of life is very high, unless it's regressed into like a pre-industrial time, and the technology has gone backwards because it atrophied, or it simply wasn't sustainable in a mechanized culture anymore. So, tell me, these are all the problems with antinatalism. This is the problems of implementation only. Now we come to a philosophical problem. And that philosophical problem is, life is suffering? Yeah. Okay, I agree with that. And is it selfish to have children? To put that suffering on them? Well, yeah, I could agree with that. But in our modern world, isn't it more selfish to want a world where no one can experience anything? Doesn't the point of extinction render the objection of selfishness as a mute point? Even if you could implement it? If a tree falls in the wilderness, does it make a sound? Does it crash? How can there be pain or anything without life? So therefore, how is it really selfish to have children? Because if you didn't, the question becomes a meaningless one. It's like a glass half empty, glass half full. You can always say having children is selfish because life is pain. But isn't that a subjective viewpoint? Life can also be pleasure. Life can be many things. Non-existence makes all things a mute point. So not only suffering becomes a mute point, but pleasure, joy, sadness, worth, fear, hate, love, ecstasy, agony,